Kansas City Chiefs general manager Brett Veach has hit the ground running, despite the fact that the Chiefs have won 2 consecutive Super Bowls and 3 rings total during the reign of the Veach. It's interesting to see someone go back to work so early and so fervently despite all of this continued success, and it can mean only one thing: that inside the building at One Arrowhead Drive, this team is taking a three-peat very, very seriously. In an article from A to Z Sports.com, there were a couple of interesting quotes from Brett Veach about the UDFA class, about the draft in general, and I wanted to get into those now. The very first quote comes to us from A to Z Sports like this. This is Brett Veach talking. Yeah, well, our staff has done a ton of work, Veach explained of the draft process. And I mean, we spend more time on rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 than we do on 1, 2, and 3, just because there's so many of them. I think that's one area where we've been really able to thrive over the years, and we do such a good job organizationally of how we kind of construct and put together that backboard together for rounds 5, 6, and 7. And that's the cool part of the draft, because once you get to around 5, 6, and 7, these drafts go in just so many different ways. So you're always looking at your board when the final pick is turned in. You're seeing a ton of guys that you had in the 6th or 7th round, draft picks that are still out there. And we're able to quickly identify those guys and go sign them. The crux of the article in question was basically that through the ranks of the UDFA, Brett Veach had picked up 3 players that he thought had draftable grades. Those players being Ethan Driscoll, the offensive tackle from, where is he from? Marshall. Don't know why I blanked on that. Fabian Levet, the defensive tackle from Florida State, and Curtis Jacobs, the linebacker from Penn State. Blanking on everything right now. But the article made a point of the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs had, as UDFA, guys that they thought had draftable grades, meaning there's all sorts of players that can play in the NFL, but they fall out of the draft. They have undraftable grades because something on film, because one of their measurables, etc., they never produced, whatever it is, it is. This causes them to fall out of the draft, and a lot of times those guys need a redshirt year on the practice squad in order to be productive players at the NFL level. There's a couple things they have to work on. They have to take some time away from football in order to hone specific skills. When you are talking about a draft pick, you're talking about a guy that is expected to be able to be on the field at some point in their rookie season. It doesn't have to be starting. This can be a minor role on a team, but it means that they should be able to come in and contribute in some way, shape, form, fashion, facet, or manner. Oftentimes, this means, for those later round guys, special teams. The Chiefs supposedly landed 3 names on whom they had draftable grades. That is massive. The article in question goes on with another quote from Veach. As you mentioned, I think there are a few of these guys that we were surprised by a couple of the signings we had, Veach said. We were surprised a couple guys didn't get drafted. I mean, the linebacker from Penn State, Curtis Jacobs, the tackle from Marshall, Ethan Driscoll, and in both cases, I mean, we were really close to just pulling the trigger in either round 6 or 7. We ended up getting both of those guys. Fabian Levet, another defensive tackle from Florida State. Three guys there that, I think all three of those guys we're excited about, and all three of those guys can come in and have a chance to earn roster spots this year. This is impressive for the Kansas City Chiefs. So basically, imagine the Kansas City Chiefs had 3 more 7th-round picks. That's how good a value Brett Veach is seeing from these 3 players. Who are these players? Fabian Levette, 6'4", 314 pounds, 10 3/8 inch hands, 35.5 inch arms, an 84 inch wingspan. That is 95th percentile, and a 40 of 5.10. Curtis Jacobs, the linebacker, goes 6'1", a little bit short, 241 pounds, 10 1/4 inch hands, arms of 31.5 inches, a wingspan of 78 inches, a 40-yard dash of 4.58, a short shuttle of 4.40, a 10-yard split of 1.59, a vertical leap of 35 inches, a broad jump of 124 inches, 3-cone drill of 7.15, and a bench press of 18 reps. That is a very physically impressive linebacker. And finally, Ethan Driscoll, the 6'8", slightly plus, offensive tackle out of Marshall, 313 pounds, 10.5 inch hands, 35 3/8 inch arms, 83 1/2 inch wingspan, and a 40 time that was timed other, so probably as a high school kid or during training in Marshall, of 5.22. He was injured during much of the testing process. So, a couple talking points here. The Kansas City Chiefs had a rare offensive draft. A rare draft where the offensive players outnumbered the defensive players and were probably overall more impressive than the defensive guys that they ended up getting. In that year, where the Chiefs happened to have an offensive type draft, they also pick up 3 UDFA who probably can play as rookies in some capacity. 2 of them are on the defensive side of the ball. One of them that I really like, Miles Battle, is a cornerback as well. Another thing to talk about here, defensive tackle is a lineman, right? Obviously, it's a defensive lineman. You also had Hunter Nourzad, Kingsley Suamatea, and C.J. Hansen, who were drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. These are linemen as well. Offensive linemen, but linemen. And you had Ethan Driscoll come into Kansas City as a UDFA for this team. That's 5 linemen in a single year, 4 of them being offensive linemen. A year removed from 3 of the Kansas City Chiefs assets coming onto the team, 2 through the draft, 1 through the ranks of the UDFA, being at defensive end. They also drafted another defensive tackle that never made it, right? But we have seen an increased load put on, or an increased amount of effort put into the lines, both the offensive and the defensive, in the past couple of years. This is almost certainly with directive from Andy Reid. Andy Reid has always been a fan of line play. So when we have these 3 UDFA come in that probably can play NFL football, and 2 of them are linemen, 1 an offensive tackle, 1 a defensive tackle, it should not surprise us that that is where the emphasis is going. Brett Veach is trying to, one of the things that is great about Brett Veach, he is always trying to aim toward the future. Line play is how you get there. I just thought it was interesting that we had so many players. I've been talking about players that I think will maybe have a shot, and all 3 of these players were among those that I had listed, not because of any great analysis that I did, but because they're so obviously NFL players, Ethan Driscoll may be a little further down that list than Fabian Levett or Curtis Jacobs, but these are obviously NFL players. So to be adding them through the ranks of the UDFA is just a master class by Brett Veach. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.